Hello, welcome to Social Perspective. Today we have an article saying Supreme Court asking center why it cannot buy 100% vaccines if it is getting discount. Now the center has submitted in Supreme Court that it is getting more discount when compared to states only because the reason that center is buying vaccines in bulk amount and in large quantities. So the Supreme Court has asked the center, if you are getting discount only for that reason, then why you cannot buy 100% vaccines and distribute yourself to states equitably. It said the Supreme Court said the center with a 35,000 crore budget to buy vaccines has money to spare, unlike the states which have suddenly been burdened with the task to cough up funds for vaccines. Now, in Karl Marx perspective, if we imagine center and states as two classes, definitely center is a have class and states is a have not. States are have not class because center has more bargaining power. Center has more machinery at its stake, which states do not have. Center has more funds. States do not have more funds. So center is a half class and states are have constitute half not class. Now here not necessarily center is exploiting states. That means half class is exploiting half not class. But Supreme Court feels so that states are being exploited because they have no money at their disposal, but they have to buy vaccines to save their people. If we look into the next article, it says, "Let center distribute vaccines," says Odisha CM. Now, Odisha Chief Minister Navin Patnaik has called for a consensus among all the states on a universal vaccination program for COVID-19. In a letter to all chief ministers and personal calls to a few, he expressed grave concern at the prevailing COVID-19 situation and suggested that the center procure the vaccines and distribute them. Now we have imagined the center as a half class and states are half not class. This Odisha CM calling to other CMs and calling for cooperation to collectively demand center for vaccine disposal reminds us of class for itself. States constituting a class but not merely having consciousness among themselves that they are all on the same footing is class in itself. But here Odisha CM asks other CMs for cooperation. That means he has recognized that other CMs or other states are also on the same footing and they are also facing the same distress. This consciousness drives class in itself towards class for itself. We can see here Karl Marx class struggle. Now have class is center because it has means of production. That means in this case, it has better bargaining power with respect to vaccines. It has better machinery at its disposal and it has better budget. That means it has more money to buy vaccines when compared to states. That's why states constitute have not class. Now class in itself is they are existing distinctly. There is no common consciousness among them. But class for itself is there is common consciousness. We have seen here Odisha CM asking other states to cooperate and ask center collectively to dispose vaccines. That means they have consciousness that they are all on the same footing. There is a sense of oneness. This is nothing but a subjective realization of objective reality. Subjective realization means individually everyone is realizing that their fellow being is also on par with them. They are also undergoing the same distress and they collectively have to fight for the justice. The being in distress situation is objective reality and realizing that they are all facing the same situation is subjective realization. This is required to overthrow the oppressor. In this case we need not overthrow the oppressor, but we need to bargain better. This collective consciousness, this constituting of class for itself, gives rise to better bargaining with the center. That is all we can analyze these two articles with the help of Karl Marx class struggle. Moving on to the next article, here it is. This article is just an update about Mehul Choksi case. Court in Dominica adjourns hearing in Mehul Choksi case. As we have this article here, we can analyze Mehul Choksi case in various perspectives. Firstly, in R.K. Merton's conformity and deviance perspective, R.K. Merton says there exists state anomy when there is unequal emphasis between cultural goals and institutional means. Now we can say Mehul Choksi has both cultural goals and institutional means. Cultural goals is to make profits, let us say, and institutional means are to make those profits in legitimate manner. That means taking a debt from the banks taking money from the banks and repaying those that debt is institutional means. That means doing business in legitimate manner, in a profitable manner is institutional means. Now, as there is unequal emphasis between these two, that means he has goals. Uh, he is trying to make profit still, but he is not following institutional means. That means he is not repaying the debt to the banks. That's why there is unequal emphasis now. This situation, as termed by R.K. Martin, is state anomy. Now, R.K. Martin feels that there are five possible responses by the people in a situation of state anomy. First possible response is that conformity. In this situation, there is both equal people follow cultural goals and they also follow institutional means. That means they conform to the societal norms and expectations. Now, definitely Mehul Choksi is not under this category. Second category is innovative. That means there are cultural goals but institutional means are not there. They have given up institutional means. People have realized that if they follow institutional means, they cannot reach those cultural goals. That's why they innovate new means to reach those cultural goals. Now, Mehul Choksi can be dropped under this category. In the next category, there is ritualism. In ritualistic people, they do not follow cultural goals, but they follow institutional means. That means they realize that that if they follow institutional means, they do not reach cultural goals, but they do not want to abandon institutional means because society is expecting them to follow institutional means. That's why though they want to reach those cultural goals, they give up the idea of reaching those goals and they adhere to institutional means. This is a ritualistic kind of people, they do this. The next category is retreatism. That means the people in this category strongly internalize cultural goals and institutional means, but they know that if they follow these institutional means, they do not reach those cultural goals. That's why they are in a kind of situation, they cannot follow institutional means, but they cannot leave institutional means also because they have strongly internalized. That's why they retreat from the society as a whole. They retreat from society once for all because they are not in line with the society's expectations of cultural goals and institutional means. In the next category, there is a kind of rebellion. That means these category people also they realize that they do not reach those cultural goals if they follow institutional means, but they have an alternative idea for cultural goals. They do not like this kind of society. They have new social order, new form of society with new cultural goals and new institutional means in their mind. Definitely, Mehul Choksi is not expecting everyone to follow his path. That's why we cannot say that he has new social order in his mind. So he does not fall under rebellion category. He may fall under retreatism because we can say we do not know whether he is still aspiring for profits or not. If he is not aspiring for profits, then we can say that he abandoned cultural goals also, and we can place him under this category. That means he retreated from society because he has fled away from another fled away to another country. So we can place him under this category if we think that he has abandoned cultural goals. That means he has retreated from society. So he's either innovative or retreatist. If we know the reason or if we know exact uh, position of Mehul Choksi, we can place under him and we can place him under appropriate category. Now, why only such individuals follow deviate from the cultural goals or institutional means, why not others, is not explained by R.K. Martin, but it is done by further sociologists. Why is explained by Albert Cohen as frustration. This means people may be out of frustration, they do that. They may have undergone many kinds of stress and strains, and then out of frustration they decide to give up institutional means or cultural goals. Bernard Lander says it is due to social disorganization because there is not adequate social control or social regulation on the individual, and there is social disorganization as a whole. Individuals may choose to deviate from cultural goals or institutional means. Now, Walter Miller says it is just out of thrill. Sometimes we see people deviating from the societal norms just out of thrill. The other day, we have seen the example of a couple in Tamil Nadu marrying in flight over the Madurai Meenakshi temple. That can be termed as a deviance from the institutional means just out of thrill, but not surely Mehul Choksi's case. Now we have Clavard and Darlin saying it is criminal subculture because they have grown in such a society which is used to deviance from cultural goals and institutional means, they also end up deviating from those means and ends. That is criminal subculture, Claude and Orlin says. We cannot conclude that Mehul Choksi has criminal subculture, but as his relative Nirav Modi also deviated from these institutional means, we can partially say that there is a criminal subculture around him. Now, David Marza says it is mood fatalism. Mood fatalism is nothing but individuals see everywhere around deviance. They see every individual around them deviating from those cultural goals and institutional means, and they find no reason for only them to follow cultural goals and institutional means. Hence, they too deviate from those means and ends. And they say that as everyone else is deviating, why cannot I? This is mood fatalism. This kind of people, though they respect institutional means and cultural goals, they just deviate because everyone else is deviating, and they find no value for them to adhere to those means and ends. This happens mostly in corruption cases because people, though they want to be honest in office, they see everyone else in their office being corrupt, and they also find no reason for them to be honest, and out of mood fatalism they also become corrupt. Now we have our Howard Baker saying it is labeling theory. Labeling theory is nothing but we label some persons as being corrupt or being culprit or being criminal. Now, because that labeling has done, the individual finds no reason for him to stay in the path of cultural goals and institutional means any longer. That's why he decides to deviate from the means and goals. Edwin M. Lamart says there are primary and secondary two types of deviance. Primary deviance is before labeling has happened, and secondary deviance is after labeling has happened. Now, in Mehul Choksi's case, if we try to analyze, it may be out of frustration because he has ran out of money, and he has no tools at his hand to make profits further. We may categorize him under this category. It may be also social disorganization because we have no adequate legislations, we have no adequate regulations under place to check those NPS, that is non-performing assets. That's why social disorganization also may be termed as a reason. No, it is not, definitely not thrill. It may be termed as criminal subculture. It may be also termed as mode fatalism because this running NPS is not a new issue in India. It has happened many times in the past also. So mode fatalism can also may be a reason. Labeling theory also may be a reason because Mehul Choksi, only after being labeled as fugitive economic offender, he has fled to another country. So whatever deviance he has done before that labeling is primary deviance, and whatever that he has done after that labeling is secondary deviance. Now we can further understand why Mehul Choksi behaved in such a manner through Westahan approach. Westahan approach is nothing but understanding social actions at the level of meanings. And in this approach, we have two steps. Step one is direct observational understanding. Now, what all we have done so far is just direct observational understanding. We don't know the exact reason why Mehul Choksi is behaving in such a manner or why he is deviating from cultural goals and institutional means because we don't know what situations he has gone to. It comes out only after the investigation by the police. That is step two, empathetic liaison. Empathetic liaison is nothing but we going into the shoes of the offender or shoes of the deviator and analyzing the situations in his perspective. If we analyze the situations only in his perspective, we come to understand the big picture why the deviance has happened. Now, this empathetic liaison we have not done yet. So far, what all we have done is just direct observational understanding. This empathetic liaison we can do after the investigation has happened and after we knowing the reasons for the deviance. Now, this Western approach is followed by Max Weber in his social action. This deviance from the cultural goals and institutional means is definitely a social action. For Max Weber, what is termed as social action is that uh, something that is influencing others, some action that has some effect on the other alternative or other fellow being. That is termed as social action by Max Weber. Now, Uh, Depending upon that influence, he categorizes social action into four categories. That is recreational. That means that social action has both means and ends, and both means and ends are rational. Second category is word rational. That means in this category, means are rational but not goals. Goals are legitimized, ends are legitimized only due to value. Uh, Third category is traditional social action. That means both means and ends are followed because of customs. Fourth category is emotional social action. That means both means and ends are due to impulse, out of emotion. Now, the subjective dynamics of human, this is known as subjective dynamics of human behavior. Max Weber says, unlike Durkheim, Durkheim feels that individual behaves or individual does so many actions only due to societal compulsions. But Max Weber, unlike Durkheim, understands subjective dynamics of human behavior and says that there are psychological causes due to own experiences. Now, in Mehul Choksi's case also, there may be psychological causes due to his own experiences in his life. There may be numerous examples he might have seen and he might have experienced, and on basing on those experiences might have influenced his behavior, and that influence we can say it has psychological cause. Now, Max Weber tries to understand psychological causes for the individual's social action. Now, to restore this social change, we have Talcott Parsons' cybernetic hierarchy of control. What is social change according to Talcott Parsons? It is change in the direction of energy and information control. Now, in Mehul Choksi's case, can we say that social change has happened? Let us analyze. Social change is nothing but change in the direction of energy and information control. Before the Mehul Choksi is going into the another country, fleeing into another country, or before Mehul Choksi becoming fugitive economic offender, the energy is in the hands of banks. That means banks could demand Mehul Choksi to repay their debt. The information control is also in the hands of banks, because banks have many means to control the actions of Mehul Choksi. But now Mehul Choksi has gone to another country. Now Mehul Choksi has more energy because now banks have to go behind Mehul Choksi and request him to repay the debts. Now, and surely there is a change in the direction of energy and information control also. Now, in order to bring back Mehul Choksi, we have to do we have to strain a lot because the energy is in his direction now, and information control is also in his direction. Now, surely there is a change in the direction of energy and information control, and hence this can be termed as social change under Talcott Parsons' definition. Now, to restore this social change, Talcott Parsons suggests two ways. One is socialization, that means imbibing of values, morals, etc. Second one is social control, that means enforcement of law, police action, etc. Now, as we know that imbibing of values and morals do not work out easily, we often resort to social control, that is enforcement of law and police action. Now, in this case, that is exactly what is being happened. We are trying to bring back Mehul Choksi through laws, or we are requesting those countries like Antigua and all to expatriate Mehul Choksi. For this expatriation, agreements need to be signed between those two countries, and we are prosecuting Mehul Choksi in that country, and in here also, courts are trying Mehul Choksi. Police are trying to apprehend Mehul Choksi. This is nothing but social control. We are trying to arrive at solutions through enforcement of laws in our country. So, in this Mehul Choksi's case, we are trying to restore social change through social control, but not socialization. Talcott Parsons' social action is something done consciously. Consciousness drives social action in Talcott Parsons' perspective. We can analyze Mehul Choksi's social action or Mehul Choksi's deviance in Talcott Parsons' perspective also. He says choice of means to reach goals is influenced by motivational orientation and value orientation. Under motivational orientation, we have cognitive orientation, cathectic orientation, and evaluative orientation. Under value orientation, we have cognitive, appreciative, and moral orientation. This looks with micro perspective. That means this deals with individuals' own opinions, or individuals' own experiences, or individuals' own likes and dislikes, and his evaluative judgments. This deals with societal consciousness. Talcott Parsons, while describing social action and social system, he says there are pattern variables for role definition. Now, Mehul Choksi definitely has a status in society, and pertaining to his status, there is a role he has to play. What role is it? Doing business in legitimate manner and making profits. Now, this role performance generates forces of strain or tension. Why? Role performance, if it is done in legitimate manner, it has no strain or tension. But if it is done in illegitimate manner, it generates strain or tension. This extent of strain is directly proportional to institutionalization of role expectations. Now, why we have so much strain in the society, why we are so much bothered about Mehul Choksi and Nirav Modi and all, because we have some expectations towards those businessmen. We expect them to repay their debts because that is taxpayers' money which they took as debt. As this expectation is institutionalized in society, we are so much worried and so much bothered about their fleeing to other countries without repaying their debts. Uh, why we are not worried about politicians bribing or politicians undergoing corruption and taking taxpayers' money? Because we do not have much expectations towards politicians today. We have institutionalized their expectations. We have institutionalized low expectations towards politicians. That's why there is no much strain to when politicians are undergoing corruption. But here, with regard to businessmen, we have so much expectations for them to repay their debts, and there is so much strain. Thus, extent of strain is directly proportional to institutionalization of role expectations. These pattern variables, Talcott Parsons says, has five pattern variables. One is effectivity versus effective neutrality. Effectivity is acting in a sudden manner for personal interest. Effective neutrality is keeping in mind the larger interest and delaying their sudden social action. Now, Mehul Choksi here has gone for effectivity, but not effective neutrality. Second one is self-orientation versus collectivity orientation. Self-orientation is acting in personal interest. Collectivity orientation is compromising personal interest for larger public interest. Third one is universalism versus particularism. This is kind of role, whether it is universalistic in character or particularistic in character. Businessman's role is particularistic in character, just taking debt from banks and repaying that debt. That is particularistic. It is not universalistic and does not have wide aspects of relations with banks. Fourth one is ascription versus achievement, whether Mehul Choksi ascribed for that role or achieved that role. We cannot say surely, because ascription also happens in industrialist. It is hereditary. Industrialist position is hereditary. We also can term it as achievement because they might have some qualifications to uh, uh, assume that post. Fifth one is specificity versus diffuseness. This is again kind of relations. Specificity is having specific relations and diffuseness is having diffuse kind of uh, varied kind of relations with the banks. Now, analyzing these five pattern variables, we can understand Mehul Choksi's behavior in a broad manner. That is what we have from this article. We have analyzed Mehul Choksi's deviance in R.K. Martin's perspective. Next, we have gone to understand it more broadly in Max Weber's perspective, and we have come to understand why we are trying Mehul Choksi only in that particular manner. That means why we are only trying Mehul Choksi through laws and enforcement of police action in Talcott Parsons' perspective. And we have analyzed this why there is so much strain in society about Mehul Choksi through Talcott Parsons pattern variables of role definition, etc. That is all. Moving to next article, we have articles terming about suicide here. It says man, woman found hanging. Boya Ishwarappa, 36, an agricultural laborer, and Rangappa Gari Nandini, 30, who were both married to different persons and allegedly in a relationship with each other. Now they were reportedly chided by the community elders for allegedly continuing the relationship despite warnings. Uh, Now they have found hanging. The backdrop is this: they were in a relationship despite marrying to different persons. They continued their relationship despite Community warnings. Now they are seen found hanging. That means they attempted suicide. Now we have another article related to suicide here. That is staffer at DMHO's office ends life. An employee working with additional district medical and health officer in Anantapur reportedly committed suicide. Now the reason for this suicide is debt burden. Drawing a salary of 25,000 a month, he reportedly had debts running into lakhs and found it difficult to run his family. Now, both these suicides, if we look through Imal Durkheim's perspective, these both fall under the same category. Imal Durkheim, while terming suicide, he says suicide can be of two reasons due to two forces, that is, forces of integration and forces of regulation. Under forces of integration, there are two types. One is altruistic and the other one is egoistic. Altruistic suicide happens when there is too much integration with the society and society's values and norms. Egoistic suicide happens when there is not minimum integration with society and its values and norms. Under forces of regulation, we have anomic suicide and fatalistic suicide. Anomic suicide is nothing but when there is no regulation at all from the society. Fatalistic suicide is something which happens when there is excessive regulation upon the individual from society. Now, these two suicides, if we analyze, it happened due to egoistic type of integration because both of them chose to retreat from societal values and norms as they could not adhere to society's expectations. Society expects them to be, in this case, society expects these individuals to be faithful to their married ones. As they could not adhere to those societal values and norms, they tried to disintegrate from those societal values and norms. That's why it is an egoistic suicide. In this case, also, this person could not adhere to society's expectations to repay his debt. That's why he chose to commit suicide. And hence, this also comes under the same category, that is egoistic suicide. That is less integration from the society and its values and norms. Under regulation, if we try to place these two suicides, it falls under fatalistic kind of suicide because there is excessive regulation from society. Now, the individuals do not regulation from their community, but community elders reportedly chided and gave warnings to these two individuals. That means there is excessive kind of regulation, and they could not bear that regulation from the society. Hence, they decided to commit suicide. Here also, there is excessive regulation. That means the person who has given debt might be coming behind him and asking to repay that debt. That means that there is excessive regulation. Now society also expects him to repay debt. That's why he could not bear that regulation and he decided to commit suicide. Hence, both these suicides fall under egoistic kind of category and fatalistic kind of suicides. But there is a criticism to this suicide. M. Halbach says there are psychological factors also which decide suicide. Max Weber tried to generalize Emile Durkheim tried to generalize the suicide that individuals commit suicide in all such situations. And in such situations, all individuals commit suicide. But M. Halbach says, why only some persons commit suicide in the same situation? Now, debt burden, if we see, debt burden is almost general in our society. It is there for almost everyone, especially in middle class. But only why this particular person chose to commit suicide? To understand that, we need psychological factors. But Emile Durkheim ignored completely the individual psychological factors and says society only has influence on individuals. Individual may not have any personal role in that social action. Or that is what the criticism from Halbach. He says psychological factors also influence individual actions. Now, Atkinson statistics questionable is not relevant here. J.B. Douglas criticism is also not relevant. David Freeman says there is ecological fallacy because personal phenomenon generalized. Now, this is personal phenomenon. Uh, Man, woman found hanging due to their personal relationship. This is also a personal phenomenon. It is personal a problem to that individual. But this being generalized is criticized by David Freeman here. This is ecological fallacy, he says. That is what analysis about these two suicides in Emile Durkheim's perspective. Now, moving on to the next article, here it said there are caste categories for Narega's pay. And now, what happened is that center tried to divide the Narega space pay bills into different categories. Hitherto, Narega's pay bill was dispersed under the same head, that means general category. Now, center decided to categorize those pay bills into different under different heads. That means SC head, ST head, and general head. Now, why the center is doing this is it says the ministry may be thinking that this allocation is all being taken by the general category people, so they want to segregate based on the population of the district. Now, the center wants SC/ST people to derive benefits from the Narega scheme, and hence it is categorizing the pay bills into under different heads, that is SC head, ST head, and general head. Because if it is categorized under those heads, the center can ensure that money allocated to SC head or ST head only goes to such SC and ST people and not others. It cannot be siphoned off by general category people. But there is criticism to this move. The criticism is that this will complicate the payment system, and experts expressed fear that it may lead to reduction in scheme funding. Uh, there is also a saying that all Narega workers have same rights, and this reform is meant to reduce funding. Now, if this reform is meant to reduce funding, really, this reduction in funding goes against the principle of affirmative action. Affirmative action, this is a kind of reservation, because the center is trying to reserve those funds only for those people. It is a kind of affirmative action, but affirmative action actually has to happen to bring the underprivileged sections on par with other sections. But if that bringing forward is at the expense of the general category people, it cannot be said as affirmative action. It is again discrimination, but not positive discrimination. Hence, it goes against the principle of affirmative action. Why these affirmative actions and reservations are required? We have Imail Durkheim saying that this unequal distribution of opportunities or unequal distribution of division of labor, if the opportunities and access to benefits from the government schemes is distributed inequitably, then it may lead to exclusion and alienation in society, and it may lead to social conflict. Now, to avoid such social conflicts, we have positive discrimination and affirmative actions from the government, giving out reservations. This is a kind, as this is also a kind of reservation, but this goes against that principle of positive discrimination and affirmative action, because it is being done at the expense of general category, when if it is true that the reform is meant to reduce funding. Also, the Hindu has seen a copy of the advisory which does not include any rationale for the new procedure. If there is no rationale for the new procedure, then this will only divide society into uh, different categories, because general category people start to see the SC and ST people siphoning off their share of the cake, and this will only enhance social divisions in society, and it will only reinforce caste consciousness in the society. That's why Andre Betal said that it is politics through its continuous interventions in the society that the caste consciousness still prevails in the society. Now, Hindu finds there is no rationale in this move, but even then, center tries to go for this new move. That means in this situation, we can remind of Andre Betel, and we can appreciate him saying that it is politics that is reason for existence of caste consciousness still in the society. That is all we have for today. Thank you for listening. Now, if you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe to Social Perspective. Thank you and have a nice day.